Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to our demonstration kitchen community cooking series. I'm Kelly Moore. I'm the Family and Consumer Science person with MSU Extension at Missoula County Extension Office. So tonight we're going to talk about 3 things that sometimes you typically buy at the store. They're usually very good, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to make these yourself. And it tastes so much better because you have made it yourself. So we are going to make pickled onions, which are very easy and quick. We're going to make a tzatziki sauce. And we're also going to do pesto with a little alteration. I'll tell you about that soon, okay? So maybe you made a New Year's resolution. Anybody wants to share one of those? Or sometimes a resolution means you want to try to make more things yourself, to make more things homemade, because you know exactly what's going into it. You can choose the ingredients you want. If there's one particular item you don't like, then you can make that alteration, which you can't do in a commercial item. So, especially with the pickled onions that we're going to start with, you're going to be amazed how fast and easy it is to make those. So you think, why will I ever buy those again? Okay. So today's the good day to join us. We're going to make all these things that I hope you'll find to be delicious and pretty easy cleanup. So you'll have 3 things. If you wanted to have some kind of event where you supply all of these things, you'll be ready to go. And it takes very few ingredients. Okay? So I have the recipes available over there as well, and you're welcome to take those. There are tons of recipes for each one of these, and so I do a lot of research to find what is easy to follow, pretty easy to find ingredients, and even that is not always the case because we are looking at a lot of things that we can't buy always here. Basil was one. They seem to be out of basil every place, and that's typically what you use to make pesto. But tonight we're going to make a little substitution, and I hope you will find it that much easier to make it yourself the next time. So let's start with the onions. This is the one thing that we won't need to use the food processor for, so I'm going to scoot that over a little bit. I always tend to make recipes that use minimal equipment. The food processor and the stand-up mixer are 2 things I always recommend that you have. If you enjoy cooking, you really cannot do well without them. So today though, I'm going to use a very sharp knife, which helps too. When you're using, I'm going to move this over a little bit more so you can see better. There. It takes out a lot of frustration when you're cooking to have good equipment. Sharp knives is definitely something you need to have. I always recommend this. This is very convenient for something I'll show you in a few minutes. Other than that, we're using kind of basic equipment today. A little bit of a cheese grater here. So everybody typically has those in your house. So this recipe uses purple onions. You can use regular yellow or white onions, but these look pretty because they're just a nice color. And usually you serve pickled onions alongside some other dish, or you might use them if you're making some sort of appetizer or whatever. So it looks really good in the glass bowl. So we'll do that. You can slice things in the food processor, but I like cutting with a knife. It's kind of relaxing for me, other than cutting my finger, which I did this morning accidentally. So we're going to just use a regular knife. I'm going to cut the end off here. Since we are making rings, pretty thin rings, I'm just going to go ahead and slice from the end. Okay. When you see all of these famous chefs doing all this fancy cutting and fast chopping, that is not going to be me. I have been using knives for a long time, but I kind of like to use a little more precision and be very careful. So I'm just going to take the skin off there, put that off to the side, And again, if you use a very sharp knife, it's very easy to do this. You want to try to make them as thin as possible all the way through. And typically a purple onion is not as strong as some of the other onions, like the white onions, so hopefully I won't be crying here tonight. Oops, there we go. And people will love this so much that you might even, when you're making it home, want to use 2 to 3 onions and just double the ingredients to pickle them. Pickling is such an easy way. I mean, you can pickle so many different things. I did this same thing with the daikon radishes and some carrots. So that's also another great vegetable to pickle. And we're all familiar with pickled beets. So there we go. So that didn't take too much effort, just to slice an entire onion. Then I'm just going to break them up a little bit and stick them in this bowl, because this is what our liquid will go over. Again, there's so many different recipes. You'll have to find the one you like the best. I always prefer to use honey if I can, just because that's a natural ingredient. I mean, honey is sweet. It's, you know, sugar is sugar, but I just like using it like to support the bees when I can. So, and I happen to have a friend who has beehives, so I get some great honey there, rather than using sugar or any of that. Okay. So there we go, kind of just breaking those up a little bit. All right. Then we're probably going to have to mix those in a bigger bowl so we can get our liquid to cover all of them. This is something you want to try to do early in the day, or actually it tastes better if it sits overnight and it gets a little chilled. It allows all the flavors to soak in. So anything you're pickling requires usually 2 ingredients at least. So a vinegar, an acid, and a sweetener. So I'm choosing to use red wine vinegar and honey. Okay. So move this out of the way so you can see better. All right. Okay, so in this recipe, I believe she says about 1/3 of a cup, but just depends again on how much. You could double the recipe, or of course, vinegar does not pour out very well with these. I take these off and just pour a little bit myself. Okay, you could use champagne vinegar, white wine vinegar, a lot of different vinegars, and it would be a good result as well. Okay, so then I'm going to put my honey in. So it says like about 2 teaspoons. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, and because of course honey does not come out of there very easily on its own. So that's about 2 teaspoons. There. Honey, every honey has a different flavor, so you definitely want to taste it first. If it's a raw honey, you're going to have a stronger flavor. Okay. So it's basically this, and then I'm just going to take a whisk and mix it together. Sometimes I put just like a pinch of salt on there as well. Not too much, just right. I usually use like kosher salt, because I just like the flavor of that salt better. Good. And I always recommend that you take a taste first, because it's pretty hard to add to it after you've already poured it on there. Okay. And if your lips don't pucker too much, you're okay, but I think you still need just a little bit more honey in there. They puckered a little too much. Okay. There we go. The reason why you're slicing everything about the same size, because that way it can penetrate every onion evenly. Okay, that's going to be great. So I'm just going to pour this on top of our onions here. And the longer they sit, the more they get just a little bit more purple color going on. Stick them in here when they get covered all the way. All right. Now we're going to put those to the side so you can have a taste of them later. And of course, they won't taste as good as they would if we were to be able to leave them until tomorrow. Okay. So that's it for our pickled onions. Just that simple. So, and there are plenty of stores that sell them, but you won't. I mean, that onion basically cost probably about $1, a little bit less, and then vinegar you typically have at home anyway, so very inexpensive to make those. Okay. Any questions so far? That's pretty easy to follow there. Okay. All right. So we're going to go next to our tzatziki. That too needs to kind of sit a little bit to kind of get the flavors together. Is anybody familiar with tzatziki? Okay. I love it. I would eat it on about anything, so that's why I like to make a lot. Tzatziki too depends on several different ingredients. There are lots of recipes. Some herbs here, and we have mint, a little dill, a little parsley. Calls for garlic, so like several cloves of garlic, some lemon juice. The yogurt's really important in this recipe. A little Parmesan. No, not Parmesan, I'm sorry, we're going to pesto already. We're not ready for that yet. Just yogurt here and a little salt and cucumbers. So, I have 2 cucumbers here. Anybody tell me if there's a difference? Anybody know what that is? I'm sorry, what was that?
The one in this hand is English cucumber?
Yes. And this is just a regular garden variety. So, anybody else know another difference? What makes one an English cucumber, what makes one a regular?
Does it have to do with the seeds?
True, yeah. This cucumber has much bigger seeds. Tends to have a little more liquid to it, a little more water. These are usually just hothouse grown, so pretty hard to grow these, in your garden. So you can buy these throughout the year. They tend to be kind of pricey sometimes, so you just have to look.
And all year round, they're typically grown in the hothouse?
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, we use this because there's not as much liquid, but I'll show you what we're going to do to get out all the liquid, because that's important. Otherwise, you got a really runny tzatziki. You don't want to really do that. They have much thinner skins, so it's easier to eat the skin on these than it is on this one. Sometimes I'll just put the whole thing in and blend it. So we might just do that part tonight. So this one, we can taste it later, but I'm not going to use that one right now. If you have a pinch and you don't have an English cucumber, you can make that work as well. But we'll use what it calls for tonight. So I'm going to cut the end of this one off. All right, I'm going to wash this off a little bit. Okay, again, we could probably do this in the processor, but I just like doing some things myself if I can do it. Just kind of keeps me awake, I guess, while we're working on things. So I'm going to grate this cucumber. I'm going to grate it into a towel, which seems kind of strange, I know, but I have a reason for that. Okay, and I'm going to keep the skin on it this time. So we'll just keep scraping. This is about half of a cucumber. This is a good kid job too, if you got anybody who wants to do this. Just keep scraping away there. So then we're ending up with a pretty good pile there. Typically, these are always wrapped in plastic too, which I hate that extra packaging, but it does protects the skins because they are so thin. So, and they can charge more for them that way too. That's what it is. All right, anybody smell that so far? That's because you're sitting far away. But it smells so good. You smell that cucumber. All right. Okay, so we've pretty much got that off there. Just put that to the side. So now I'm going to kind of wrap this up. And what I want to do is try to get all the liquid out of there. So I'm going to just twist this and we'll see how much liquid comes out of there. Actually, it's quite a bit, isn't it? But it would have been twice as much if we used this one. So, has anybody ever made like a pickle relish before? Okay, this is what you're gonna do when you're making pickle relish. You're gonna be squeezing a lot till you get it all out of there. But the nice thing about it too, you'll have this nice green liquid left, so you can drink that, put it in one of your morning drinks, smoothies, any of that. And you get all those vitamins out of there too. All right. Use it as a facial. I don't know, there's a lot of things you can do with fruits and vegetables. Okay. Now that's probably about as dry as we're gonna get it. So now I can unwrap my towel. And so you can see how it got so compressed by getting all that liquid out, okay? So that's just gonna put that flavor back into our tzatziki and give you a green towel. All right. So now I'm gonna come around on that side, see if we've got everything over there that we need. One thing about it, I am kind of a messy cook. I don't know. You probably noticed that already. Okay. Put that over there. But it's important to try to keep a pretty clean work surface too. I think we're gonna need this anymore. All righty. So, the tzatziki, again, there's just so many different recipes. And I just happened to pick this one because it said easy, so I figured, well, that's gonna be pretty fast. It doesn't have too many different ingredients, so we're good. I'm gonna use a Greek yogurt. This is really important, you use a plain Greek yogurt. This is, you can buy a whole milk yogurt, so that tastes even better. But you don't want any flavored yogurts. I buy this too because there's a lot in here. It's a good price. So we're going to measure, and again, our recipes are over there. You're welcome to pick those up. This calls for about a cup of yogurt. And of course, you can double the recipe. Let's see. All right. And yogurt's used in many parts of the world as or tzatziki as kind of a condiment, like people use ketchup around here. So it's full of flavor and actually very healthy for you. So we're just going to stick this in here, or let's see, let's do our, garlic here first. And we need 2 cloves because it does chop better when you just have it in there by itself. Another thing, in these recipes, I try to use the garlic cloves. I know there's a lot of jarred garlic, and that stuff's okay for some things, but I wouldn't think I would use it for this recipe, because you just want to have the fresh garlic. And of course, garlic comes in kind of a skin, because it protects it that way. So in order to get that off, we're just going to take it and smash down. I could smash garlic all day. I don't know, it just gets rid of a lot of restlessness, I guess. So I'm going to put this bigger clove in there. So we've got 2 cloves of garlic. I'm going to cut off this little dry stem part here. Okay. Part of there. All right. So we're going to go ahead and chop that up. And for a food processor, I use the pulse more than I do anything else because you got a lot more control that way. once you just turn it on, sometimes things can go from perfect to way too processed in 1 second. So, all right. We're also going to need some lemon juice, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the lemon open there. Try to pick out the seeds before we squeeze it. The lemon's going to keep a lot of our herbs fresh for pesto, and for this it's just going to add some more flavor. So let's see what else we need here. We're going to start with some dill. So a lot of people grow this in their garden, but pretty hard to find fresh dill unless you grow it in your house. Like we were talking that some people are able to do that. So I tend to, I mean, I don't want to promote one store over the other, but Good Food Store always has fresh. You can buy it in a package at a lot of places too. So we need about, let's see, 2 tablespoons. So I'm just going to go ahead and chop that up. Try not to include the stems in there because they won't be as easy to digest as all the other stuff. But yeah, in the summertime when you've got a lot of dill, this is a perfect recipe to use that. And okay, so we've got about our 2 tablespoons. Oops, got our seed out of there. Okay. Go ahead and put that in. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and squeeze a little bit of lemon juice in there. Now we're going to put our grated cucumber. Just going to do that to mix it together. Let's see. Scrape it down so everything kind of gets mixed all together at the same time. A little bit of salt. Okay, now we're going to put in our yogurt. I have this habit of just not always measuring and making things up, which is not a good habit. So I try to watch myself when I'm doing it this way. Okay, then we're just going to mix it together. Scrape it down. So it really doesn't make much if you just do the one recipe, and it does taste better like 2 days later. So you might want to double that recipe. Okay.
Like a batch or double the batch. How long would it keep in the fridge?
I typically think sometimes it gets a little watery the longer it sits because it tends to separate. So I would eat it within like say 3 to 4 days at the most. I think the 4th day would suffer in quality a little bit. So I'm going to scrape this out. That's as simple as it is right there. And I'll put it in a bowl and we'll be able to taste it at the end here. But it is a beautiful color for sure. So we're going to use that again. I'll put it over there. So it's a great thing to make in the summer because it tastes really good with other vegetables. You can use as a dip or like some toasted pita bread or any of those things. Alrighty, so there is our tzatziki. And I'll set that over here by our onions. And that just took a couple of minutes. Didn't take any time at all. I'm going to rinse this out. Sorry about that. We have to... Okay. Another thing I always recommend and carry with me is a canning jar with a lid, because all the great things you can do with this. This is a great way to make salad dressing, which I tend to make my own. So pretty convenient to have that. The next thing we're going to do is pesto. So has everybody tasted pesto before? Okay, so pretty familiar with that. But there are so many different ones, different kinds, because basically you need some greens. That's how you get the color. A little lemon juice, a little garlic, a little olive oil, and nuts. So because you're always learning something, when you cook, a lot is based on availability of the product you want to make. If you can't find it, you either decide, hey, I'm not going to make that, or you just say, well, I'm going to make up something else, or I'll substitute. And sometimes you find you like that even better. So I had trouble finding basil. I was telling Sarah, I tried last week. They told me it would be in any day. I had 3 or 4 places, you know, and it didn't come. Tried again today. No, still has not arrived. So I don't know where basil is backed up someplace in the world, but it wasn't a good time to get it. So that's what we're going to take this as a learning opportunity, and we are going to use a little spinach instead, which seems to be always available. And hopefully everybody likes spinach, okay? You won't even realize that's what you're eating when we get to it. If I'm using spinach in a recipe, I like to use the baby spinach, because the full-grown spinach usually is very stalky, so you have to spend a lot of time getting the ends off. Like, you know, the baby spinach, you're gonna eat the whole thing. But it's a little harder to use the bigger spinach in pesto, because I just don't like stalks and things. Another thing too that sometimes I've made changes on, anybody familiar with this? I know, okay. So pinyon nuts, as they're called in the Southwest, because they come from the pinyon pine. We just call them pine nuts. These at one time were up to over $20 a pound. They were very expensive. So I'd like to buy them in bulk when I can, and now they start putting these in little packages at another store in town, which if you want to find out where that is, you can come up and look later. But if you don't like pine nuts, I can't imagine somebody who doesn't, but if you don't like them, you can use walnuts instead. So the basic ingredients, again, for pesto, have your greens, garlic, lemon juice, nuts. You can use just about any nuts really you want to, except for probably the cashews or anything like that might make a little bit different flavor. I always like to put a little Parmesan cheese in there, but if you are vegan or you don't care for cheese, then find a recipe that doesn't require that, and they'll use some other ingredient. I like to buy the big block of Parmesan. As you can tell, half of it's gone because you use a lot of it. It looks like it's quite aged, but it's okay. It can look like that and still be good. So we're going to grate a little bit of that in there. Again, the equipment I think is important. This little microplane here, and we're going to zest a little lemon peel in there because I think that adds a little brightness. And let's see, what else? We won't be putting honey in there, so I'll put that aside. A little olive oil. So again, I have so many. I'm kind of an olive oil collector. I buy it all the time in different flavors. This one happens to be infused with a little garlic, so it's kind of a nice one for this. It doesn't matter if you use, virgin olive oil, extra virgin, any of that. I wouldn't use a real expensive oil in there, but it's all good. If you don't like olive oil, then just use like a walnut oil would be good. Any of the nut oils, sunflower oil, any of that. So.
I noticed that both your vinegar as well as your oils are organic. Would you always recommend organic?
That's kind of a personal preference for me, but it doesn't have to be that way. I just like kind of knowing where things come from, and that, it doesn't have a lot of added ingredients, but no, I think that's certainly up to you. Sometimes they tend to cost more, and maybe there's not a whole lot of difference in flavor, but it's just what I like. And then we're going to use a little bit of salt, and I was saying earlier I like to use a little kosher salt. We did a class a few years ago at the extension office about salt and about the different flavors. It was amazing how we had like probably 10 different types of salt and the flavors and what that will do to your recipe, either to add or take away. Some salt is way too salty. I know it sounds strange, but yeah, some salts are just a little sweeter. And so it's always a fun thing to kind of do some research in. Okay, so again, we're going to start by chopping up our garlic, because nobody wants to have giant chunks of garlic in their pesto. And plus it lets me do one of my favorite things, which is smashing garlic. There we go. And even though we got a little dill on this board, that's okay. I don't think it's going to hurt our flavor any for our pesto. One thing I didn't add to the tzatziki, because I could add that. I had some mint, and sometimes that's used in tzatziki, sometimes not. It just depends on what your flavor profile is. So if you guys really want to try that in there, I'll chop it up and add it to it as well. Some people think it's got a little too strong of a flavor. And then I have a little bit of parsley here. I think we're all kind of used to the kind of parsley they used to put on your plate just to make a little green, which really doesn't have a whole lot of flavor. This is Italian parsley, which is a little stronger flavor, which I like to use that. And we're going to use that with our spinach just to add some little complexity. One thing too about the food processor, if you don't have it just right, it will not work for you. So you have to have it all on the right direction. Scrape down that garlic again. Right. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of our parsley. So I'm just going to kind of rough chop that, because again, I don't want all those stems to be in there. And always with this, I'm going to add a little bit. If you add a lot, you can't take it back out. So just start with the little bits and then go from there. Take that stem out. Alrighty. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in. I'm going to start putting in our spinach. I won't put all of it in because I like it to all be blended well. So it doesn't take much just to chop that up all the way. Okay, a little bit more. This has been either in the container it says washed already or hand washed. So. And it's going to be great to have that green. It's a very nice color. And spinach is one of the few vegetables that actually has a lot of iron in there. Anybody remembers, like, years ago watching Popeye? That shows how old I am. He used to eat a lot of spinach, so. Okay, scrape that down again. All right. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze a little lemon in there because that's going to keep that all nice and green. Right. And we can add a little bit more later. So if this is all right with everyone too, I think I'm going to go ahead and put the pine nuts in there. Anybody have any problems with pine nuts? Okay. Sometimes I toast them first because it just kind of brings out a little bit more nice flavor. I'm not going to do it this time because that will require the stove, and I almost burned something else because I'm used to using a gas burner, so I don't want to burn the nuts. That would be very bad, as expensive as they are. So let's see. I'm going to just have to open these up a little bit. These I did get from this place, so you can usually find them in the cooler. I know Costco has them sometimes too, but they're a much bigger bag and much more expensive, and you can order them online too. So we are going to, instead of just guessing, I'm going to just kind of see what our recipe says. Does anybody have my recipe over there? Does it say how many nuts to use for there? Pardon? Half a cup. Okay, that's what we will do. And then if it's not enough, we'll just add more after that. You can also add the walnuts with it, or just all walnuts or all pine nuts. So. And I'm going to pulse those again. Again, you can make pesto by hand. I'm not saying if you don't have these, you can't make this. But the nice thing about the food processor, it does chop through things evenly and without you cutting your hand. So that's another good thing. All right. Just a little bit more. Okay, this time I'm just going to leave it on for a minute. Okay, now at this point we're going to start putting our oil in a little bit. All right, and we're going to start out with about a half of a cup. I don't know that we'll use all of it because we're just going to kind of judge. I'm going to use a little bit of the garlic infused oil and just a little bit of the regular. Since we've already put garlic in there, we don't want it to be too garlicky, but I don't think there's such a thing as too garlicky myself. There we go. A few years ago, I took a tour at an olive grove and watched to see how they made olive oil. It was really interesting. I highly recommend that to anybody if you get a chance. Okay, so the olive oil I'm going to just kind of pour down from the top, okay, as we have it running, and just kind of drizzle it in slowly. Okay, and I'm going to keep scraping it down because that way you want to keep everything in getting the same amount of what you put in there. At this point, you might say, wow, I think I need a little bit more spinach. I mean, that's what it's all about. You just kind of add as you go along. And if you're making a whole lot of pesto, you're actually going to use this container and possibly part of another one. Kale is another good thing to make pesto out of. I actually almost like it as much, if not better, than the basil or the spinach. You just don't want to put the stems of the kale in there. You just have to take the leaves off. Okay. All righty, now we're going to add just a little bit more oil in here. Wow, that's a really pretty color. Okay, now at this point too, we're going to start putting in our Parmesan. Again, I mean, you could buy the Parmesan already grated in the bag, but sometimes they add other things when they do that, so it's not always the same flavor or consistency. They have to, when you buy grated cheese in a bag, they put stabilizers in there. And sometimes that does affect a recipe. So just so you know. I'm going to grate, let's see, onto this plate. Let's rinse this guy off. You can also use another kind of cheese too, as long as it's like a hard cheese. So if you like a little stronger flavor, like a nice goat cheese works well in here too. Let's see. Let's put that guys in there. All right. It doesn't matter if you use a finer grate part or the bigger. Okay. And I'm going to start it with a little bit. If it doesn't taste like I want it to, I'll just add more to it again. Okay. All right, let's try that. And I usually don't put the salt in until the very last because the cheese will have a little salt in there as well. So you don't want it to be too salty because then you can't take it out of there. You just have to keep adding more stuff. Okay. All right. Now, at this point, sometimes I ask for a volunteer. If anybody wants to come taste it and say, what else do we need up there in that bowl? Anybody want to volunteer? No, you just want me to be the judge? Okay. Well, thanks for your vote of confidence. We'll see you. All right. So, wow. I think that's good. Just need some salt, which we have not added. And I'm going to go with a little more lemon juice, too, because I like it just a little lemony. So I'll go ahead and squeeze that in. That's the fun thing about doing anything in this food processor. Baking, I don't recommend you just kind of keep adding or subtracting, but when it comes to this kind of stuff, you are just going to be the judge of what it needs extra. Right, whoops, I've gotten a lemon seed in there. Don't want that to be in there. And also, I know Meyer lemons are coming out too. Does anybody know the difference between a Meyer lemon and a regular lemon? Okay. Usually a Meyer lemon is a little bit different color. It has a whole different flavor. It's a little sweeter. It's a very distinctive flavor, and it probably would not taste good in here. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to what varieties you're getting. Of course, if we do it this way, then we won't get seeds in there anymore. I thought I had them all out. There we go. And we're going to put a little bit of salt in there. I have a teaspoon, but I'm going to start with about half a teaspoon. Okay, there we go. And at this point, it's still not too late to add more spinach or whatever you wanted to put in there. If you wanted more, let's see. There we go. We'll put a little bit more of this in there, or parsley, because it's just going to all chop up together. And then just let it run for a little while. Okay. All right, then we're going to take one final taste before we put it in our serving bowl. I think we need a little bit more Parmesan. Pesto is something too, you want to try to eat it within the next couple of days. It tends to kind of get brown and kind of oxidizes. So, I mean, even though you put lemon juice in there, the top part of it will get brown.
How do you like to eat pesto other than like on pasta?
I just like dipping things in there. I dip a lot of vegetables in there and like pita bread, any of that stuff. Toast, I mean, I'll eat it on anything. So, yeah. And of course, it's just very close to what chimichurri. You have to add a lot more ingredients, but you know, you eat that on meat and lots of things. So. All right. And the last squeeze or a little bit of lemon juice. All right, now that we have a green mess here all over, I think we're gonna put this in a bowl and we're gonna be ready to taste all this stuff here soon. So see, we've made 3 things you could use for appetizers or for to serve with a meal, and it's taken us, what, maybe about 40 minutes. That's because I'm slow. So, yeah, very fast and easy. Like I say, because it's such a beautiful color, too. We need to see this green color in January, don't we? This makes us think about spring. I always say be very careful when it's so tempting to reach in there and grab this thing out of there, but I've cut my hands several times doing that without thinking. They're very, very sharp. Okay. So hopefully you will be inspired to make some of these recipes. Like I say, if you try the ones I have chosen and you decide you want something a little different, that's part of the fun, is just researching all the recipes. I found too, and we talked about this in our last class, there are so many people now who have blogs and websites with their own recipes, and not to say that some of those aren't great. There are a lot of Pinterest recipes that are good, but there are some too that are not the best. So you just want to, I always like to kind of, depending on what I'm making the food for, I kind of like to go to the old reliable recipe places, and then if I want to experiment a little bit, I'll try some of the other sites too. Okay. All right. So I will put out some crackers here after I get my mess off of the counter, and then everybody can have a taste. Yes, we do twice a month. Yeah, the first Thursday, second Tuesday. Yeah, so the first Thursday is at noon, and the second Tuesday is 6 o'clock. So, in fact, there's a list of classes over there. I don't see, do we have any like printouts? I need to do that just for of our classes we're going to have here, that they can just read off of that. Okay, I'll have to bring the printouts. Yeah. Oh, thank you. So yeah, I thank you all so much for coming. For so long we couldn't have anybody in person, so it's a lot more fun to have real people. Thanks for being real people. And two, like you say, the onions, I mean, you're not going to get the full effect because, of course, they need to marinate for a few hours or overnight. But, so you could just try, take a little taste there. Get a spoon for that. And I always welcome any comments. It's different when you're cooking something on site and everybody's watching, but I mean, if there's something that needs an adjustment in flavor, please let me know. We can always add a little something else. All right. And we'll use these for your dips. That way everybody can have their own individual serving. As far as the onions go, that might be a little trickier. Let's see if I have some plates. Or I guess the worst case scenario, you might just have to put one on a napkin to try it for now. Okay. Go. All right. So please come up and help yourselves to any of that. Okay.